Appreciate everybody's promptness. This is awesome, especially, it is summertime and there are many other things you could be doing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here this afternoon. My name is Clovis Grant and I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for 360 Kids. And hopefully you're here to learn about the Black Youth Housing Project, about tackling an old problem in hopefully a new way, a different way. And our focus will be on this project in particular, about how we are going to aim to improve housing stability for Black youth, especially keeping in mind homelessness prevention for this population. It's an important part of our work at 360 Kids, supporting young people. And I just want to, again, thank you all for joining us. I did, and I'm going to just quickly scroll. I was just looking at the RSVPs, and to join us was a few political figures. I'm not sure if they're on, but I will mention their names nonetheless. Regional Councillor for Vaughan, Mario Rocco, as well as Regional Councillor for Richmond Hill, Joe DiPaolo. I'm not sure if they've joined us as yet, but I do want to acknowledge their presence. Oh, thank you, Alessandro. Thank you for that note, and really appreciate you joining us as well. And this is session number 2. We had a wonderful session on last Thursday. And we're so pleased to have the community interested in this important discussion, like I said. What we want to do today is to look at this particular project. We're going to speak about the project details. We're going to talk about why we need a project like this. We're going to hear from some of our partners, really important in doing this work, to do it with our partners. And fourthly, how you can help. So there's a hook, right? There's a catch as to why you're here. And all joking aside, we really do want this to be a community project, and for all of you to have a way of contributing and supporting this important initiative. I do want, before I get into the land acknowledgement, I do want to thank an important funder for this project, and that is the United Way and Reaching Home Canada. The Reaching Home project is a federal initiative, part of the National Housing Strategy, which is aimed at addressing homelessness amongst Canadians. And young people are part of that population. We know that 1 in 5 people who are homeless tend to be youth. And we'll talk about the challenges with Black youth in particular through this project. And I'll do that a bit later with the support of some of our partners. So before I begin, I'm hopeful that Fitz is on, because Fitz was going to be, Fitz from Anchor, one of our partners, was going to be doing the land acknowledgement as well as the ancestral acknowledgement. So Fitz, if you could take it over from here, I would appreciate it.
Not seeing him on, Clovis.
Okay. And I was chatting with him just a few minutes ago.
Wonder if he's gone on to another link.
Ashley, could you just do a quick check with him? Because yeah, he did connect with me, say he's good to go.
Yeah, I will reach out right now.
Most appreciated. Just bear with me. for a couple of seconds here. You know, while we wait, I will just do, just to keep on time here. I'll just, for those who are not familiar with 360 Kids, just allow me a few moments just to explain a bit about who we are and what we do and how this project fits in, and then we'll just go back to our script. So 360 Kids has been around for over 35 years, and really, how do I situate our work? Well, homelessness is an issue in York Region, and many people don't, especially in the 905s, don't appreciate how much of an issue it is. But it is an issue, and the causes of homelessness amongst young people is very diverse. And I guess one of the most important comments I want to make about homelessness, about young people, is that it's not a choice. Unfortunately, there is a myth that young people leave to the streets because they just don't want to deal with the rules at home, but that is so far from the truth. I was in the midst of explaining about the drivers of youth homelessness, and I talked about that there are three different drivers that we can identify. One being system failure, and that's many of our institutions that are not as supportive of our young people, and many of those young people end up falling through the systems, whether it be our education, justice, child welfare system. Those systems that are there to support our young people are failing them. Then there are structural issues, and structural issues are things like poverty, racism, discrimination. All of those are also drivers of youth homelessness, and we can't forget the challenges of home, and so many young people end up having to go to the streets because home is just not safe for a whole host of reasons. And so the work that we do has been premised on ensuring that young people are supported regardless of what those drivers are. And so that is the work of 360 Kids, and we've bucketed our work under three different areas, actually 4 different areas, I should say. And we call them 4 pillars. And one is support around education, making sure that young people have those supports that helps them move on with their lives and their education, because that is an area that many young people say that they want. And just because they're homeless doesn't mean they don't want an education, but our systems sometimes are not as flexible as they should be or could be. And so that often is an area that young people struggle to attain. Employment is very similar, and so our work is about providing the education support, the employment support, and health and well-being. It's a broad category of, we call it wraparound supports that ensures that young people are successful. It may mean counseling, it may mean providing them with individual support, just to make sure that they are successful in the sort of those bigger ticket areas, employment, education, and the 4th area being housing. We provide a range of housing solutions for young people throughout York Region, and whether it be supporting youth who are survivors of human trafficking, we provide emergency housing support, we provide diversion support through a program called Night Stop, which is an accredited model that looks to using hosts within the community to offer housing options and solutions for young people. That too is another approach to housing, and of course our transitions program, which provides longer term support for young people to bridge the gap that they have in terms of affordable housing. And so this Black Youth Housing Project actually sits within that bucket. Just being a little bit challenged with my screen here. I'm not sure if Fitz is on, and if not, I will do the land acknowledgement. Ashley?
It doesn't appear who's joined, and I haven't gotten a response back.
Okay. So let me just go ahead and take care of that then. As for those in York Region, you know that York Region sits on Treaty 13. Our closest First Nations community are the Chippewas of Georgina Island. The land that we know as York Region has been the traditional homes of many First Nations communities, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Huron-Wendat, and the Anishinaabeg peoples, and they have been for millennia been stewards of this land, and now as settlers on this land, we need to and must also respect the land and steward the land just as well as they did. And in keeping with our conversation today, we also know, as we talk about settlers, we also know that there have been populations like the Black community in particular, who have been brought here through forced migration. And this has had significant impact on our Black community, our Black people, and in particular, our Black youth. And we know that through this forced migration, many lost their lives in the Atlantic. Millions of people were displaced from their homeland and forced into abhorrent conditions as part of the migration, and even more challenging circumstances as they live in this new land. And so when I talk about the impact of discrimination and racism, particularly anti-Black racism, that has had a significant impact on our Black community. And so when we talk about then, why do we need a project like this? Well, it's to address that particular concern, that particular issue that our Black community, our Black youth, they face. Again, I'm going to now dive into more so why this project, and why do we need to focus specifically on the Black community? Well, when we look at the data, and we're grateful for the Region of York, United Way, who commission a point-in-time count every 2 years. And from that data, we learn quite a number of things. It gives us a profile of what the homelessness situation is like in York Region. And what we have seen consistently is an over-representation of Black youth in homelessness counts, in homelessness data. We know that the population in York Region is about 2.5% Black. However, when you look at the homelessness population, it's hovers around 11, 12, 13%. So you see, it's almost a five-fold overrepresentation of our Black youth. And the reasons are numerous, and I'm going to have some of our partners share more about that. But needless to say, anti-Black racism stands very strongly in that equation, and a lot of that is because of the colonial past that I spoke about at the beginning. And so the question is, what if we can change the course for these young people. You know, using the same approach that we have in ignoring the specific identity may not always provide the solutions, and that may not provide the support that these young people need. And so it is worth tackling this problem in a different way. And this is what this project is about. And again, thanks to the funding from Reaching Home and the United Way, we're able to do this. And there are different aspects of this particular project. One, it's actually the funding for the purchase of a house that will house up to 5 young people. And we have been able to actually purchase that house actually almost a month to the day. It is located in the city of Vaughan, which is great. We're able to work with our partners in Vaughan for this project. And so that's an important aspect of the project. The youth will be able to stay in the house for a longer period of time as they're provided with support. And that's what I'm going to get into now in terms of, so what's going to happen with this house? And we're in the process of developing a model of housing that we're not actually sure what that model will be all about. And that's the purpose of this conversation today. We want to develop a model. The funding has allowed us to provide some capacity for 360 Kids to be able to have this kind of a session, to be able to ramp up our resources internally, to be able to support moving our work to focusing on the Black community in a stronger way. And so we're grateful for that. But it's also to develop this model. And I'm grateful for the support of Neil's team at Logical Outcomes, who will be speaking a little bit further about how that will come to pass. The model itself is about what is this housing going to look like? What are the elements? What are the supports that will be in this model? Like I said, we've been doing housing for many years, but this particular housing, we want to be very specific. We want to be able to address the identity needs of young people, of young Black youth. And so this is why we need as many from the community as possible to provide us with that voice. And the last area that I wanted to just flag, and it's more of a thank you to the partners, the very important partners in this work. And I'm just going to list them all because we have been able to develop an advisory group of many seasoned experts in the Black community, community leaders who are able to provide some amazing guidance, amazing insights, and supports to this work. And some of them will be speaking shortly. Josie Rose, who is an instructor, social worker, community advocate, also is now currently working with York Region Police. We've got Jerisha Grant Hall, who works with Newmarket, who is the executive director, I should say, with the Newmarket African Caribbean Canadian Association. Fitz Gordon and Shernette Martin with Anchor, who does great work for the Black community in the Vaughan area and throughout York Region. Debbie Thompson, who is the director of homelessness services for the region of York. Debbie's amazing in providing great insights and supports for young people. Cordelia Obankwa, who used to be with the region of York as general manager of social services, and now is working with the province. And Cordelia, always full of insights. Dagmar Koyi, who is the executive director for REST Centers. Nathan Okonta from the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, who has a research lens, and we really appreciate Nathan for the insights that he provides. Lee Miller, who is the executive director for the York Region Alliance for African Canadian Communities, which supports also the entire York region. And Janelle Scarrett, who is the CEO for the York Region Children's Aid Society. And so the importance of these partners cannot be underestimated, and they're going to be guiding the project, providing advice to the consultant, connecting with the community, and working with the team at Logical Outcomes to help drive this project. So, as I said, I spoke very in a very cursory way about some of the whys to this project. I'm going to hand it over to a few of our partners now to speak to their interest and their why they see this project having such importance. And so I'm going to start with Josie, and then we're going to hand it over to Ben. And lastly, I believe Shernette, if Shernette is on, will be our third person speaking, or third partner. So let's begin. Josie, if you can go ahead, please, and thank you.
Thank you for having me, Clovis, and thank you everybody for coming today. I'm really excited about this project because I think it's really needed in York Region, where we do not provide a lot of support for the Black community, especially when it comes to housing. I don't think a lot of people talk about the housing issues that the Black community, specifically youth, are facing here. So I'm really excited about this project and being a part of it. So I'm Josie Rose. I'm a social worker and psychotherapist here in York Region, part of a founder and owner of Asha Wellness and Consulting, and a social advocate. But also I spent a couple of years as, a lot of years as a housing specialist here in York Region, and just seeing the impact that a lot of the Black community faces when it comes to housing issues. And Clovis, you said a lot of them, because I think most people say to me, oh, the youth are just homeless because they just want to leave home. And you're correct. It's a combination of the systemic and structural racism that they face within all the different what you talk about when you talk about education, when you talk about justice system, when you talk about CAS, and even the health system, which has failed a lot of our youth and which has pushed a lot of our youth into places where they just don't feel like they belong. And as a housing specialist, I've worked with a lot of Black people from the Black community. And even though we say York Region is a welcoming and place for everyone, we see I have dealt with a lot of youth that or even the Black community that's trying to find places within York Region when it comes to renting apartments, buying, and being told that they just don't belong, that they're not wanted. And just trying to find housing for them has been extremely difficult. And again, when you talk about the other spaces where schools, where they're supposed to feel that as they belonged and that they're important, housing, which I find is very important when we're trying to help anybody with their mental health, housing always seems to be that base, right? Feeling that they can go somewhere where they feel that they can be safe and they feel that they belong. And in York Region, we're seeing a lot of people being pushed out of their homes, a lot of youth being pushed out of their homes. Even to rent something right now in York Region is ridiculous. And a lot of our youth are having issues just trying to find employment here in York Region, and are either kicked out of school or have to leave school because they're not feeling safe. Shernette will probably talk about this in a second. A lot of our children are dealing in really tough situations when it comes to anti-Black racism, and their mental health is going through the roof. And most of the time that they get their mental health addressed is when they're impacted by the justice system. And that's when they're finally being told, okay, there may be a mental health issue going on. And so this is where, as this project that we're talking about, and as Clovis was saying, that we want to provide that wraparound support, because a lot of these agencies, especially the shelter systems that are there in York Region right now, is not addressing the anti-racism fact when they're telling their clients, okay, you can stay here, but you need to find housing, you know, you have 3 months to find housing. But when they've gone out, they're told, we're not renting to you. And people are very bold in York Region, right? They'll tell you, I've gone through it myself when they're told, I don't want you in my house because you're Black. So a lot of our youth are facing that. And again, that just adds to their mental health. And not having that secure base is something that is needed to be able to address their mental health. So this project, even though it's only 5, but it's still 5 that we're able to support, right? And going from there and seeing how we can hopefully make this even bigger, but it's needed. It is really needed for people, for our kids to be able to go to a place if they're not able to go and stay in their homes, and provided that wraparound support where they feel supported, where they can get jobs, where they can finish their education, you know, and just feel that they can accomplish something in York Region. So again, I don't know how long I have to talk, but I just wanted to say that this is very important because this issue is huge. As Clovis says, and I'm not going to go through all the you know, the statistics, but you know, to rent something here in York Region, you have to have at least $2,100 majority of the time, just to get like a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. Our youth are not getting that, right? They can't afford that, right? And you're not even getting a job that could even get them close to that. So this is where we need to find places where they can feel safe, and this is a way for us to be able to do that. So I'm hoping people will be in support of what we're trying to do, and you'll hear from the other speakers and from Neil and his group about why this is very necessary, because it is important. The systems have been failing our kids, and I'm hoping this is something that will provide some support. So thank you, Clovis, for having me.
Thanks, Josie. And if I can transition now to Ben. Unfortunately, Dagma, who is the ED for Rest Centers, is not well today, but Ben Bempa, who's the Director of Operations, is here to speak on behalf of Rest Centers located in Peel and doing amazing work out there on the housing front. But let me not steal Ben's thunder. Ben, go ahead.
Right, Clovis, thank you for the opportunity to present on behalf of Dagma, my CEO for Rest Centers. And I'm so glad to be part also for this very important project. And I believe that this project will bring us the concerted effort that we need to address Black youth homelessness, not just in the York region, but also in the country at large. And personally, I'm also living in the York region. And so this is a great, opportunity for me to also share what we are doing and how it can relate to the project in terms of what we seek to achieve. So I'll briefly have a brief introduction, an overview of what we are doing in terms of the situation in the Peel region. Then what are the unique challenges and then characteristics of the youth that comes to Rest, and how this links up with the project in terms of what Clovis and Rose has earlier on elaborated upon. Then what we have done and what impact we are seeing, and how this impact is likely to also align to the probable outcome of the project and our challenge, and then a few acknowledgements that I'll have. I'll be very, very brief in terms of the presentation because I don't know the scope of time that is given to us, as I was called by Dagmar to present in a few minutes ago.
You have 5 minutes, about 5 minutes, Ben.
All right, thank you, Clovis. So Rest Center, we are Black serving and Black focused, and at the same time, Black-led organization. And we've been in existence for over 8 years now. And mainly we provide transitional housing and support service for homeless and at-risk youth, especially also for those living out of the foster care system. And clearly the influence in terms of the overrepresentation of Black youth in the housing sector, and also in terms of how they are overrepresented in criminal and justice system, among others that have been mentioned, support our mainstay of addressing Black youth homelessness, because all this comes together as the intersectionality issues that affect Black youth homelessness. And for us, our approach has been culturally oriented, culturally sensitive, and then we support the effort for developing housing specifically to attract and retain Black youth that are facing homelessness or at risk. Just a bit of the situation in the region that we operate, which is really in line with what Clovis earlier on mentioned, with the situation from the point in count survey from the York region and also the city and from the city of Toronto. And specifically for the Peel region, we see that among the racial minorities, 23% or 23, almost 24% of homelessness are the Black people. And that 16% of them are youth ages 16 to 24 years. And rest for our mainstay, as I mentioned, is how we attract and retain the youth in housing in support of their transitioning to independence living through a community-driven and culturally sensitive model of approach. I will mention some of the models that we have been implementing, but we also hold centrally our approach and the impact within the Peel region's strategic plans, 10-year strategy to end youth homelessness, among others, in the Peel region. REST undertook, a survey within the population that we serve. And this is quite interesting because I believe that these characteristics present unique challenge that we should take into account as we approach this project. And I also believe that these are fundamental to what earlier on has been identified in terms of the characteristics of the youth that we want to serve. For us, Black youth forms about 75% of our client base, and then 6% are identified as indigenous. And then 77% of our clients are females. So mostly we find out that our client base, females represent the highest number, and they come with unique challenges that is not related to them alone, but also some form of link to their circles of family, because females are usually anchored to families. So we find them not only address a single female that comes to your end, but of course you have linked relatives that might also be needing almost similar support that you might be encountering. So as we go into this project, we should be also taking into account that there will be a linked family chain in terms of the triggers to homelessness and what we need to do. The 89% are between 18 to 24 years, and then 7% are within 16 to 17 years. And as mentioned, mostly they are unemployed, about 35%, and with 41% earning less than $10,000 per annum. And 46% of our clients have been unemployed for almost a year. This situation is quite challenging because in our support, where we try to provide housing subsidies, you need to define a criteria through which you cannot deny them, because our approach is a housing first. But at the same time, you want to see that, yes, there is a bit of contribution here to support the subsidies that you are also getting from funders. And then we have 45% of our clients being in high schools and 42% in post-secondary education. So these unique challenges present a situation that even if you are readily available to provide the housing, the linked support services that goes with it in terms of necessities need to be catered for because of their unique situation. What we have done is within our 4 main flagship programs, which we tag as the Bridge of Hope, Bare Necessity, Hero, and then Life Skills program. Within the Bridge of Hope, we actually connect the youth to bridge builders who are landlords, and they provide support services and at the same time mentoring that transcend beyond the traditional, landlord-tenant relationship. And for that matter, over the period 2002, we have been able to accommodate about 50 individuals receiving rental subsidies, and 18 of them needed starter packs that will help them to be able to be accommodated in the shelters that we provided to them. And in the area of the bare necessities, which we support them in terms of feeding, is mainly to support them such that they will not have the pressure and the stress from their income to provide for food, because once they are making inroads into the Miango resources that they have, their bare necessities is also offset, and hence we also provide them with grocery cards. And for 2002, we support about 150 individuals in this area. We also offer mental health counseling and support services, which we, in 2002, we provided about 18 unique sessions. And then with this, we covered about 8% monthly and an impact of about 20 for the year. With the life skills, that is where we come in to provide training and capacity building. And we have also inbuilt in our program training for the tenants and training for the landlords in a culturally sensitive manner. So anchoring whatever services that we are also providing is the whole area of cultural sensitivity training that we have also offered to our staff.
Just for time, can I just have you wrapping up in the next minute?
Yes, I'm almost wrapping up. All right. So in the interest of time, I would like to say that we have really seen a great impact, because the numbers that we are getting in terms of prospective clients since our establishment is about 80%. And then our enrollment is around 26% increase from previous year. And then for now, we are having over 88 or almost 90 Black youth homelessness under our support for 2023. In all, what we're saying is the challenge that actually comes with increasing demand, funding for operation, and funding for programming. So I believe as we move forward, we should also be thinking in line with how sustainable funding can be gained to support the youth, because the program is complex, it's dynamic, changing, and we need to reorient our programming to address this. I acknowledge our partners who have also supported us, and as Clovis said, we are also in partnership with 360 Kids to even have a presentation at the upcoming CHEH forum. So I believe with concerted effort, we can all really help to achieve the objectives of this project. And this project is also dear to our hearts. Thank you so much, Clovis, for the time.
Thank you, Ben, and lots of good information there. Wish we had more time, but I do want to call up Shernette now to speak. Lastly, as an important partner in this work, also particularly because this project is in Vaughan, and Shernette and her team at Anchor does amazing work in Vaughan. So Shernette, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Clovis. Good afternoon to all of the stakeholders, community partners, and groups that are on the call. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today. First of all, I just want to just give a quick land acknowledgement from where we are here in the city of Vaughan. So we are coming to you from the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, the Anishinaabe of the Williams Treaty First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, and the Chippewas of Georgina Island. And as Clovis mentioned, we do serve across the GTHA, but we are here in the city of Vaughan for the past 20 years as an organization, a nonprofit organization serving African, Black, Caribbean communities. And we are thrilled that this program is here, that it exists. Our concern has always been in living in the city that the supports that are extended never quite reach our community. Vaughan is very rich when it comes to resources and groups that provide resources, but it doesn't quite get to our doorstep. And there's a quote that says, if you want to help the next generation, you have to tell this generation. And I think it's in the telling. It's telling the stories of inequity. It's telling the stories of anti-Black racism. It's collecting the data, it's interrupting the systems, it's telling the policy and stakeholders, the politicians, it's telling them now so that we affect the next generation. And so I think what we've done through this amazing partnership is we've seen the problem, we've diagnosed the problem, and now we're trying to fix this problem. And they say, what you cannot fix what you fail to diagnose. And we've been sounding the alarm for many years in the city that there is a clear cloud of anti-Black racism through things like employment and education and policing and businesses that we have seen. And I think finally, those that are aware of it are working together to find the antidote. As somebody who is a teacher by profession, but started my work in volunteering community, working group homes for many, many years, I remember seeing homelessness. I remember the stories of these young children that did not have a home for so many variety of reasons, but I also remember the racialized children and the added angst of what that meant as a racialized child. So to be able to see this city have a home and a space that will have culturally responsive programming or supports and culturally affirming supports is a real wonderful thing. I also think that with this, we have to expect that there's going to be some people that might have a challenge with this, right? When you pray for the rain, you also should expect the mud that comes with it. And there's going to be some people that are going to wonder, well, why for Black kids? Why are we doing this for Black youth? And I think as stakeholders, we have to be on the same messaging, that there's a reason why we need a home for Black youth. There's a reason why we need programming specific to Black youth. And I think if we can do that as community partners and stakeholders and hold that to a certain degree of an account where we can not only rally behind them, but rally for an extension of this program in so many different ways and avenues. I mean, I'm thinking about employment. Josie, you mentioned employment. We've had Black students who were driving around to drop off resumes with them to so many different businesses across York Region, in particular Vaughan. I can't tell you how many, like probably 3 dozen places we've dropped off resumes with these kids. I pick them up, they get in my car, we drive around the city. Maybe 2 out of 30 kids have found a job, to the point where one child said to me, Miss Martin, do you think it's because we're Black? They said, maybe we shouldn't go in person. Maybe we should just apply online so they don't see our faces. I mean, it literally broke my heart. I said, no, what are you talking about? Like, you keep going, let them see who you are, meet with the manager, shake their hand, leave your resume. But at the end of the day, this is the angst that Black children face. It's not just in homelessness. It's when you're homeless and unemployed, when you're homeless and hungry, when you're homeless and need to have, a socialization, have to have, things that are going to make you feel whole again and healed again. When you're homeless and experiencing mental health and you're Black, and you're a Black male, Black female. There's so many layers to this. And so I'm really happy to be part of this stakeholder group that we all recognize what these issues are, and we're all working to fix and to support it. So Clovis, thank you for your leadership in this. United Way and the other funders that have come on board, thank you. We know that this is the beginning, the jump off for so many other things that's going to fix this problem, and that what we're doing today in this generation will really go far in helping with the generation to come. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the next steps.
Amazing. Thank you, Shernette. And Shernette spoke about the intersectionalities, which is so important to address in a project like this. And so thank you for flagging that, for Ben and Josie for your support as well. And so now, in terms of some of the nuts and bolts about the actual next steps to this project, I'm going to have to bring forward Neil Price, who's the Executive Director for Logical Outcomes, and he and his team will explain next steps about the project. Neil, go ahead.
Thanks, Clovis. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Neil Price, and as Clovis said, I'm the Executive Director of Logical Outcomes. We're going to try to be as brief as we can because what we really want to do is get into some Q&A. Really what I want to do is introduce ourselves so you know who's involved, and then give a brief overview of our project, and then open it up for questions. So I'll start with Logical Outcomes. We are a nonprofit consultancy. We're based here in Toronto, but we work globally, and we specialize in evaluation, not only in developing processes, but evaluation systems. And we also lead mostly strategic planning, community-based research, and policy development projects. So that's who we are, and we're delighted to have been engaged for this project. We have deep expertise in working in community, particularly in Black communities. My work goes back in consulting about almost 12 years now, where I've been engaged in participatory research projects that looked at things like homelessness, carding, interactions with police, youth programming, a wide number of projects. And so this project is one that we're really, really excited about because we're going to be able to pull on quite a few of our strengths, and we've assembled an amazing team to lead the project. So I'm going to let the team members come on and introduce themselves. And I'm thinking we can start with Trevon.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trevon Edwards. I'm an assistant professor at Toronto Metropolitan's School of Child and Youth Care and a fifth-year PhD candidate at the University of Toronto School of Social Work. My background is in exploring anti-Black racism and how it shapes Black families' interactions with state-sanctioned systems, including child welfare, education, and the homelessness sector. I have about 8 years experience working frontline in various youth-serving areas, including education, youth homelessness, and child welfare. And I'm super humbled and excited to be here today.
Awesome. Let's go to Tanika.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanika. I am an evaluation specialist with Logical Outcomes and a researcher on this project. I have just under 10 years of experience working in program design, development, and evaluations, working with organizations across the GTA, as well as building out new programs for Black and racialized youth. I also do have personal experience with a lot of what we're discussing today in terms of housing precarity. I was raised by a single Black mother. And so a lot of what you described, Shernette, the passion that you have as well resonates with me deeply. So I am very grateful that there are folks here today who are working on this really important project, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanika. Tasia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tasia. I'm a researcher with Logical Outcomes, where I've been able to participate in a variety of community-based and Black-focused projects. My background is in social psychology and early childhood studies as well, where my focus is representation of Black kids and other diverse populations in media. And I'm really excited and grateful to be a part of this project.
Awesome. Medha, if you're here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Medha. I'm a researcher working with Logical Outcomes. I'm also doing my master's degree in development psychology and education at the University of Toronto. And I've been working in research and evaluation in the community development space for some time now. So yeah, really excited to be on this project. Thank you.
And is Tamika here?
I am here.
Oh, okay. Go ahead,
Hi,
Tamika.
everyone. Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Tamika Shaw and I'm a consultant on this project. I'm bringing 14 years of experience developing and implementing initiatives for the Black community across the GTA based on my role at Taibu CHC as primary care manager. As everyone has mentioned before, this is such an important initiative, and I'm looking forward to bringing that expertise and skill set in assessing and bringing the needs assessment piece, just in terms of developing and implementing a culturally safe and affirming housing initiative. Look forward to working or to hearing from everyone who's on the call later today.
Okay, thanks, Tamika. Is everyone seeing my screen where it says project objectives? Okay, great.
Yep.
So, okay, awesome. So we have two main objectives in conducting the research that will inform the program model. So ultimately what we want to do is bring forward the evidence that supports what it is that Black youth need, Black youth who are experiencing homelessness and housing precarity. But then what we're really excited about, and that what we know is groundbreaking, is the opportunity to intentionally think about and design what that model looks like. So we want to definitely understand those various needs, and we want to understand how to provide culturally relevant services to the Black youth that we've been discussing. And then we want to inform the development of a long-term transitional home for Black youth experiencing homelessness. So those are our primary objectives in this project. The project is guided by 4 research questions. Number 1, what are Black youth experiences in utilizing housing services? So what's going on today? We want to engage directly with youth and hear about those experiences. And we'll have Trevon explain a little bit more about our methodology in a minute. We want to look at what's already out there in terms of existing transitional housing models. So what are existing transitional housing models to support Black youth who are experiencing instability or homelessness? We want to look at what are the benefits and or challenges with the existing or emerging transitional housing models. And we want to know, and several speakers today have painted this picture around sort of the systemic landscape or the ecosystem in which Black youth move or have to interact. So we want to know what external support, systemic, institutional, or at the community level, can support Black youth in their transition to permanent housing. So those are the core objectives of the project. In terms of our approach and how logical outcomes works, we are definitely interested in looking at challenges and problems, but we also recognize that there's a lot of strength, talent, ability, capacity, knowledge in the community. And so we always want to approach our work with appreciation for that and build on those strengths. We're delighted to be working with the advisory. You've met some of the members today, and that's going to be really important to ensure that we are connected in with community stakeholders, and that the project is really informed and driven by their work, their expertise, their networks, etc. We want to keep an eye on equity, diversity, and inclusion. We know that Black people are not a monolith, and so we are concerned with ensuring that we have a diversity of experience. We've got a diversity in terms of identity among youth and other stakeholders. And we also recognize that we're dealing with young people who are extremely vulnerable. And so therefore taking a trauma-informed approach, for example, during our interviews with youth, in our recruitment and engagement with youth will be critical. We want to keep the youth at the center of this so that we don't lose sight of what it's all about, who it's all about in all of our work. So the importance of being youth-centered and the importance of being ethical and focusing on building trust throughout the project. We have submitted a ethics application to the Community Research Office. We're awaiting the initial response on that application. So we definitely have front and center in our minds the importance of being ethical, of mitigating risks, and ensuring that no one is harmed through this research process. Okay, at this point, I'm going to invite Trevon, who's our methodologist on the project, to give an overview of the methodology. Trevon?
Good afternoon, everyone. So for the purposes of the study, we're actually engaging in 2 investigations. The first of which is a rapid review. A rapid review is, in short, a form of systemic literature review that creates a search string that then is utilized across various databases to extract information relevant to a topic at hand. So in our case, this is actually, and my apologies if you hear my young one in the background crying. I have a 4-week-old in the background that's quite hungry. But needless to say, the search string is then employed across various databases to answer a question at large. And our question is, what are the experiences of Black youth experiencing homelessness, largely, as well as any transitional or housing supports that have been beneficial to them? So as of right now, we've been consulting with a librarian at Toronto Metropolitan University who has successfully been able to construct this search string. And right now, the team and I are engaged in a process of screening and vetting all the articles to deduce the articles that will discuss empirically the experiences of Black youth receiving services and housing supports. The other part of the study is then a phenomenological study. So that's a study investigating the experiences of Black youth who've experienced homelessness, as well as service providers who have supported Black youth in those very same circumstances. We're hoping to interview and conduct focus groups with young people, as well as service providers across the Greater Toronto area, including York Region, to better understand their experiences receiving services, as well as what's working well and what can be improved in regard to services available to best meet the needs of Black youth in these circumstances. So we're going to be recruiting up to 40 Black youth, as well as up to 40 service providers to help us understand this phenomenon at hand. And Neil, you're muted.
I haven't done that in a while. That reminded me of pandemic days. We're moving at a pretty good clip here because we want to make sure we've got a good 15 minutes for a discussion. So thanks, Trevon, for that overview. Okay, so our project timelines. And bear in mind, these are subject to change, as any project will know or experience, depending on how our recruitment goes, how data collection goes, but this is the current game plan. So we started in May, and during May till about now, we've been working with the advisory to gain an understanding of our project, the scope, our approach. We work with the advisory to arrive at our research questions, which I've shared, and developing all of the materials that are needed for our ethics application, which is currently under review. And as Trevon said, the project team has just started the work of really going through the empirical literature on this subject matter. So we're excited to be finally looking at what is out there, what have people done, what has been brought into the academic literature to get a better sense of the subject matter. Moving into the fall, after receiving an ethics approval, we hope to begin our data collection, including interviews and focus groups with Black youth and service providers, as Trevon outlined. Once we've completed that data, probably closer into November, we should be in a position of starting to pull our findings together, even if it's just on a preliminary basis. And there it will be really important to work again with the advisory to engage them in helping us to think through the findings and to bring a story to the data and to ensure that it's aligned with their experience. So we hope to adhere to that notion of returning the benefit of the data back to the community at some point in our process to have them participate in that interpretation. Probably closer to the end of the year, we'll be pulling together a report, which will include, of course, all of our research findings, both from the consultations and the literature review, as well as our recommendations on the program model and its implementation. And so in an ideal sense, in the very early new year, we should be in a position to finalize that work and hopefully disseminate that work as broadly as possible. I did want to say one thing before we open it up for questions. One of the reasons we were adamant about pursuing ethics approval for this is, and I think a speaker mentioned this earlier, we realize that this is for York Region. This is where it's currently situated, but we really hope that what will happen once we have the model in place and we begin the work of preparing that home in Vaughan, we really hope that there will be an opportunity to share this work broadly so that Black youth in other contexts, in other jurisdictions might benefit, if funders, policymakers, and other organizations see this work and wish to replicate it or modify it for their own context. So we're really interested in seeing this as a community project that's, yes, situated in York Region, but has the potential to really impact Black youth across the country. So I did want to reiterate that point. Okay, so that is it for now from us here at Logical Outcomes. If anyone would like to follow up with me, I'll ask that this presentation be shared. But at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd like to open it up now for questions, not just for our team, but for the project team on the whole. Are there any questions? While we wait, I know Ashley had shared some questions that came in through the Eventbrite process, and I'm going to just find those and try to address those, because I think they were, one of the questions was, how does this model serve intersectional identities, for example, Black and queer youth? That's a great question. And I think one of the ways in which we'll do that certainly is we have proposed a screening process in terms of recruiting youth participants. And so what we will do is ensure that if we have gaps in terms of youth who identifies having a disability, for example, queer youth, newcomer youth, like if we have an opportunity with that process to see where there are gaps and be very intentional in our outreach in recruitment, in addressing some of those gaps. But our full intention is to ensure we have as diverse as possible participant pool, both from stakeholders and the youth participants. So thank you for that question. Another question was, with the food insecurity on the rise, will a basic financial budgeting workshop be provided? It's a great question. We don't have the answer to that yet because we're just getting started. But certainly life skills, I think Ben has shared the work that REST is doing That includes things like, starter packs and all of that sort of support. Without wanting to get ahead of the research, I would suspect that budgeting and thinking about one's management of money will be a core life skill in any transitional housing context. So again, not wanting to get ahead of the research, but I would think it's a fair bet that that content would be in any model around transitional housing for Black youth. And then there was a question, what supports will be available for these youth specific to identifying as Black individuals? And again, those are our research questions, right? We want to find out what exactly are the supports that Black youth need. And we recognize, and I said this in our previous info session, we recognize that we may find in our research models that are not necessarily designed specifically for Black youth, but they may have relevance and potential value through modification or application to Black youth. And so we're going to remain open to looking at such models, even though our focus, as you saw in our research questions, specifically focuses in on Black experiences. But if it's a good idea and there's research behind it and someone points us in the direction of something that's worked and it's effective and we see value with respect to this project, we're certainly open to bringing that into our work. Thank you for those written questions. Were there any here today? Please feel free to use the chat or just come on to the mic by using the raised hand function. Any questions at all for anyone? Josephine, go ahead, please.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm outside, but I had to listen to this. I couldn't miss it. So thank you very much for the presentation. My question is about, since the youth are having a lot of trouble getting employed, is there any program or any thought about self-employment training and things like that? That is associated with the house itself, not necessarily.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can tackle that. Thanks for the question. We two responses. One, we do, as an organization, 360 Kids, offer robust employment programs. We serve about 400 youth in our employment programs. But it's to second part to that is relative to the house. Well, we know employment will probably be an important factor in the house, and we could certainly at that time look at doing more identity-specific employment focus. I mean, we have worked with some of the unions who were piloting some specific programs for Black youth in the skilled trade. So we'll continue to work with partners in the community around those kinds of initiatives, and we'll continue to look at other opportunities to provide very specific supports to Black youth. But we certainly do that through our other employment programs, and more than likely we may be able to do some more tailoring when the house is developed, and continue to look for opportunities with our partners in the community.
Awesome, thanks Clovis, and thanks for the question, Josephine. Any other questions or comments, please? Comments are also welcome.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This from Ben. I think I just wanted to seek a bit of clarification from the research segment and focus group approach. Will you be targeting only Black youth living in the York region or extend beyond? And then the organizations to be part of the focus group. Are you recruiting only organizations that are operating in the York region, or you extend also beyond? Thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely going to extend beyond York region, although York region will be our core focus, mainly because we know that other service providers, other jurisdictions are doing similar work and are interested in this subject. You know, how do we successfully transition Black youth to stable permanent housing? So we would be remiss to know that that work is underway beyond York region and not bring it into this this work. So the answer is yes and yes. We will definitely go beyond York region to ensure that we are engaging with people who have deep knowledge and expertise in this subject matter. Josephine, is that a new hand, or was that from your previous question?
So sorry, it's from my previous question. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Could you read it for me, Minha?
Sure. So it says, related to the youth-centered objective, when considering the needs of youth, how will you incorporate their contributions into this program? And second, which age groups will you be catering this program towards?
Great, thank you. So I'll start with the age question. So we are focused on the ages 16 to 29 at this point. However, we recognize, and Siobhan can speak to this, that we may go beyond 29 for youth, for service providers or youth who have experienced homelessness or housing insecurity in the last 5 years. They may not be 29 today, but their experience in moving recently out of, let's say, transitional housing to more permanent housing would be really valuable for this study. So they won't be excluded. So that's the age range. And then in terms of the first question, so we are reaching out to youth as part of our consultation. So they're going to have direct input into what we learn about developing this model. So I hope that answers the question in terms of how will their views be incorporated into the program. They're going to be a direct stakeholder. Shanette, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Neil. This is more of a comment or perhaps a suggestion. And maybe it's already in the works, so I apologize if it is. I'm sort of jumping ahead of the game. So we had a meeting recently regarding the refugee crisis in Toronto and the response from York region as a viable option to house those that have come from African nations. And one of the things that I feel is sometimes missing here in Vaughan in particular is not really knowing what are the provisions for people that that need these sorts of support. So we created just a Google Doc asking people to complete it with some multiple choice boxes in terms of, you know, do you provide mental health supports? Do you provide creative arts as a way of healing? Do you have culturally appropriate programming? Do you do employment service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because what I find is that sometimes when we, as organizations, and Anchor is guilty of this as well, is we have these grand ideas, these great, wonderful ideas on how to solve or try to solve these issues. And when it comes to stakeholders, we know who people are, but not what they do or the extent of what they do. And so it might be beneficial to do an outreach to groups on all sectors. So not just the social service agencies, but the arts-based agencies, the mental health agencies, the ones that are very, even academia. So just to kind of provide a roadmap for when, you know, we do the grand opening, that we know who's who and what they do so that we can better support the youth within this program. And I mention it because we did a program a year ago, and from how it happened, I'm not even sure, it was just serendipity, but this lovely visual artist came into our sort of sphere who does this work with art. And I'll tell you, it was life-changing, and just, it affected our young people so much because he used art and culture, therapy, explained so much to them about who they are, and even a simple thing as like a Dinker cloth and Kente and what the colors mean and where it's from, and how to just incorporate all of that into their history and their ancestry. And it changed a lot of our children's lives in terms of understanding their own personal identity. So I think if we can figure out who's who and what they do and find ways to have a list, and it could be a Google Doc, it could be something else, but I just want us to cover all our bases so that when the youth enter into this program, they know exactly what's out there, and we can better support them. So just a comment.
Thank you so much. And I probably should have mentioned that doing a scan of the support or services landscape is part of this work. But I really point well taken on getting beyond social services and thinking more broadly and holistically about who's out there doing great work. So thank you for that, Trinette. Good reminder. Josie, go ahead, please.
All right, so this goes with a little bit what Shanette saying, and then the person on the iPhone that put in the comment, that we talk about, or Clovis spoke about Night Stop. And we know that there's going to be a lot of people, like we said, it's overrepresented when it comes to homelessness within youth. And yet our program right now is only going to be able to support 5 youth. Is that only the youth that are going to be in the homes? Or are we going to be able to provide other supports for the people that are going to be on the wait list, waiting for housing? And can we utilize something like Night Stop? Because there is a lot of families and community people out there that would love to provide some support for the youth, and when it comes to even if it's staying overnight, right? So I was just wondering how we would utilize the community when it comes to that, especially for the people on the wait list.
And I say yes and yes. Certainly the Night Stop hosts, they go through a training program and a process to register. So the sooner we get that in place, the better. And if there are people that you know who are interested, please send them our way. And absolutely, we want to think about this in a broad way. And I think part of the work that we endeavor to do is, yes, you're right, 5 is quite limited, but there may be opportunities to identify other gaps that exist in the community, and working with our partners to find other ways to fund some of those gaps. And I think if I can speak on behalf of the United Way, who Christine Hill spoke at our last session on Thursday, and she did speak to this very issue that the United Way themselves are interested in doing, looking at any gaps that exist within the region to provide additional supports for the community. So yes, while housing is a particular focus here, I'm pretty sure that we will hear about other things as the conversations happen with respect to our youth, as well as the service providers as part of the next step, which is where I think all of you can come into play. So maybe it's an opportunity to transition, Neil, to that.
Yes, perfect seg. So I recognize we're at time, and I just wanted to reiterate the thanks to everyone for participating in this conversation, but also to put on the table a specific ask, and that is we are going to be ramping up as soon as we get ethics approval into recruitment, engagement of stakeholders, data collection, and we really need your help. And I think a lot of the comments today underlie that. We need your help in finding voices and experiences and people who should be a part of this work, who absolutely have a contribution to make. And so when the next time you hear from us will probably be to say we are now in a position to engage and recruit into this work. We will share an approved project flyer with directions on how to get involved in participating directly with us. And so our concrete ask is that when that communication comes out, that you very intentionally think about forwarding that to anyone who really needs to be involved here, because you're going to have access to a network that will strengthen this project. And so, as I said from the outset, we really want this to be informed by community. And so you've showed up here today and demonstrated your interest and many of you your passion for this subject. And so we really want your involvement at the next stage. So look out for the next communication from the project, which will be a very concrete ask for participation and sharing the word of where we're going next with recruitment into the study. So thank you so much for your time today. And we look forward to your continued involvement with us as we move forward with the project. Clovis, back to you.
Sorry, I just wanted to say also thank you, Neil and your team. Thank you to the advisory group, those who were on today, and Cordelia, I know you didn't speak, but you've spoken so amazingly in our groups, and Shernette, Fitz, Josie, Ben, and Dagmar, thank you as well. And really appreciate everybody coming and participating. And as Neil said, look out for the next email and for ways that you can help and communicate what you've heard today and hopefully connect with more young people and address their needs. So have a great rest of the week, and look forward to working with all of you in different ways. Thank you.
At this point, open it up for questions. So I'll pause there and allow for any questions, please. Christine Hill, please.
Hi, everyone. It's actually not a question. I just wanted to say thank you. I know that we have supported this funding, but it just is an amazing group of people that have come together to do this work. And I'm just so very excited to, because I know Clovis and I have had many conversations on this and some pushes along the way. So just really excited and very honored to see the people that have come forward to do this project. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
MP Roy, please.
Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you, Clovis, and everyone on the advisory committee. It looks like it'll be a very, very well researched and conducted project, which I think is essential given the scope and the magnitude of the problem that's confronting us. I did have one question about the Center for Community-Based Research and the process you're going through. Is that a voluntary process you're doing? Is that something that with the research, the sources that you're going to are requiring of that? I think it's an excellent thing to do. I'm just curious as to whether this is actually something when research like this is done is now required, which I think would be a good idea, or whether this is something that's voluntary or dependent on who you're doing the research with.
I think I can chime in and maybe support that question. So typically, oh, sorry, go ahead, Neil. Do you want to add in?
I'll just, and then I'll pass to you. Thank you for the question. So in the Tri-Council policy around ethics, working with human subjects, there is a provision that allows for when an organization is trying to do what's called service improvement, that it doesn't need to undergo an ethics process. And one could argue that a project of this nature could potentially fall into that category, but we very quickly decided a couple of criteria. One, that this is a vulnerable population, and so therefore it would be necessary. Two, and I'm sure Trevon will speak to this, the importance of going through an ethics process if there's a hope of disseminating the work and having it be taken up into the literature. What I'm seeing from a consulting perspective is that increasingly ethics and ethics approval is becoming more and more required on projects of this nature. So I am seeing that from a consulting perspective. Trevon?
Yeah, and I would say one key area in which we agreed that this would be necessary, which is the ethics process, was given we're investigating the experiences of Black youth who've experienced homelessness. So we believe that this project would be at a fault without that experience driving our understanding of services and service provisions. And that in itself is actually an exploratory question and not necessarily a service provision. So in that regard, we actually need ethics to have these conversations in ways in which protect young people, as well as hold us liable to having an ethical standard of engaging them in the process.
Thank you both, Neil and Trevon. It sounds like there's good reason to do it. And so you're hoping that this research and your findings are going to not only benefit 360 kids in this specific project, but also inform a broader audience and help with other projects of this nature. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. And Clovis, another great initiative.
Thanks for your question. MPPY, please.
Thank you very much, Neil. And thank you very much, Clovis, and all the participating organization. What a great initiative. I am thankful that you have included me, and this is something important to us. Let's all work together for the people that are in need. And in this particular cases, you are really focusing on supporting the youth in York region that are Black youth facing homelessness and the risk of homelessness. And I commend 360 Kids and the logical outcomes and all the participating organizations for your tireless efforts. And I really like it when you have not only your plan, but also the timeline all listed out. Let us know how we can be of support and working together with you. I do have one quick question. I don't know how or whether it can shed any lights or anything. Being also a minority group, the Chinese community also face different kind of challenges for the youth. And I know that they have identity problem initially. I come across an organization, it's called Across You Hub, and it's really supporting the youth as they face all the challenges. And all the youth that I've seen a lot of very successful people from your community. You guys will be the great example or encouragement for them. So if there is a way to really encourage them from the, not just to provide the housing for the homelessness, but really just to do it from the real source of the concern and help them to change, and that will be beneficial. Is there any way that we can do something else as well as innovative along this line?
I'm going to defer to Clovis. Yeah.
Yeah. I would be happy to have a follow-up conversation, Daisy, with that. So I'm not familiar with the group, but maybe we can have a conversation around different housing opportunities. This one, as you know, is very specific to the Black youth for the reasons stated, but really our work is broadly around supporting any young person who is homeless or at risk of homelessness. So I would love to hear further, and we can address whatever needs that come up there, but happy to have that chat.
Sure, we'll get together.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Can I just also add, and perhaps Javon will want to weigh in here as well. We are keeping our, while our primary focus is the experiences of Black youth. We've heard from advisory members and others that one of the things that we might want to be aware of is that there are other models or approaches or initiatives that are not necessarily Black focused, but may present elements that can be modified or brought into this model, which is Black focused. So I did want to signal that while we do have a very specific focus for all the reasons that have been shared in our process and in our research, we will have the opportunity to also look at models that are not necessarily Black focused, but may be useful. Trevon, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I heard another part of the question is, what else can we do alongside transitional housing that can support these young people in particular? And one of our research questions is also keen on what are structural, institutional, and other community supports that are able to mitigate risk factors and act as protective factors for youth under these circumstances as well. So I assume that from our literature review and empirical investigation, we'll be able to identify particular interventions and protective factors outside transitional housing that can also be considered in tandem to support this population.
Okay.
Thank you. MP Roy, is that a new hand or was that the existing? Okay, please go ahead.
Just very quickly. So because when you started, Clovis, I thought you were talking about the housing, obviously, but you were also talking about support programs to go along with that as part of this project. And I was assuming that's part of what this research is about, is to understand the experience of Black youth experiencing homelessness and then figure out what those other supports are. So that's a part of it. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I think, Neil, in your response to what you said, I think it's a really efficient and good way. I understand that this has to be specific to Black youth and their experience with homelessness. But as you said, there are other models out there, and there may be, instead of recreating the wheel, there may be things that you can take from that to address the specific problems or challenges faced by this particular population. So I think it's an excellent approach, drawing on other models, but making sure it's tailored to the community you're helping right now in this study.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Exactly. Thank you so much. Any other questions for anyone here today? Or comments? There's a question in the chat. Is your research going to be with Black youth in York Region? Will priority be given to residents of York Region? Yes. So we recognize that because this project will have because the housing is going to be situated in York Region, it makes obvious and perfect sense that we would ensure that we're tapping into, and I'll speak before we close about our call to action is what we're calling it. So how do we get participants to come forward? So we're going to be starting with the advisory and their networks and sort of snowballing from there in hopes of focusing on the region. However, we also recognize that there are other initiatives beyond York Region that have a very similar aim in terms of addressing transitional housing for Black youth. And so we would be remiss to not bring those voices into our work to learn about the experiences that they've had, perhaps challenges, etc. So the answer is yes, but also we will remain open to speaking to people in the GTA who have been doing this work specifically around transitional housing for Black youth. So thank you for your question. Will the slide presentation be shared? Yes, I'd be happy to share that presentation. And I would ask 360 Kids to share that with anyone who's registered. Gail, is this a comment or is this, do you want to come on and address? Yes.
Sure, Neil, if you could just share the your contact information. That'd be, again, I apologize, I missed it the first time. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone, for all the work that you do.
No problem at all. Okay, how are we doing with the chat? Any other? Thank you, everyone. Excellent project and approach. Look forward to seeing the research and results. Please let us know how we can help. That's from MP Roy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great. Any other questions?
There was another question above that from Fabian in the chat.
Could you read it for me?
Yeah. So it says, as a 360 Kids volunteer, I have seen their holistic approach on education, employment, and health deliver impactful change to youth. Once you, Logical Outcomes, do your research, I imagine a whole range of issues will come up that will impact housing. How broad is the scope of this initiative? How broad does the scope of this initiative expect to address?
So from a research perspective, if I'm picking up on what you mean by broad, we are going to be consulting across the GTA, and the literature itself will take up literature in Canada and the US. And I'll allow Clovis to maybe answer the question around, you know, beyond the housing, the specific house, what's the scope then of the impact of this project? If I'm understanding, yeah. Go ahead, Clovis.
Yes, and thank you, Fabian. And we're certainly always grateful for the support you provide to us. And in terms of the question, I talked at the beginning about building capacity, which is really important. This is work that not many have tackled, and so we expect that there will be a lot of learning for 360 Kids, and so we want to be able to, from the research, to better understand how we can adjust, add to, improve the work that we do currently for young people and specifically for Black youth. So there will be some learning that will come as a result of that. We are engaging in our own equity journey to make sure that we are making our services more equitable. And so that will be informed as well by this research, and do this alone. And so what do we need to do more broadly within the York Region community to address any particular any gaps that may come as a result of the consultation? So there will be different perspectives that will come from the young people. There will be different perspectives that will come from providers. And we're not talking just about groups that are working with the Black community, because our young people right now are accessing services from a range of service providers that aren't necessarily Black. So we are looking for how we can better address the needs that might actually come based on the consultations. And there may be service gaps that then we'll have to talk about how are we going to address those service gaps. And it may or may not be work that 360 Kids does. It may be work that other organizations do. And as a community, we come together and work together to be able to fill those gaps and to address our. But through the consultations, we expect to be able to address the needs that will become apparent. So I hope that answers the question that you asked, and I think it's a really
Thanks,
good one.
Clovis. I see, Christine, you have a hand up.
Yeah, if I can, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Clovis has said. I mean, part of the reason United Way has engaged in funding this project is I mean, number one, we were disturbed to see the results of the point in time count in 2018 and 2021 to see that Black youth are overrepresented in the population in York Region and experiencing homelessness. So really this project is, as Clovis says, is a first step in really trying to unpack and understand the experience of Black youth around homelessness in York Region and and how the system is responding to them or not responding to them, probably even greater. And so my hope is that this work, that the work that comes out of here will do a couple of things. One will help to inform, because as United Way's role in overseeing the Reaching Home federal funding in York Region, we have a community access system that we've put in place, a framework with the Regional Municipality of York. And so it's going to be really important that the outcome of this work helps inform that system and helps us to look at, do we need to do things differently in how Black youth are accessing services into York Region? And we may have to, and we probably will have to do things differently. And this research is going to help inform that, or at least start to inform that process. So that's really critical for us. The other thing is, as we continue down the road in our continued funding in York Region on through Reaching Home, obviously if there's any identification of gaps of services, then obviously we want to look at some of those priority populations that we are serving through this funding to be able to do that. So so that's my hope, that it might lead to some additional funding down the road where we will fund maybe some specific programs. And as Clovis says, it may not be 360 Kids, it might be somebody else, it might be a partnership, but then to also inform the access system in York Region.
Thanks, Christine. Any other questions? There's one in the chat I see here from Aaliyah. The question is this the first project of its kind to be conducted in York Region in recent years, or is it more so aiming to add on to existing findings? So to my knowledge, this is definitely a first of its kind, where we are doing a broad-based consultative process to arrive at a program model for transitional housing for Black youth in York Region. So the answer is yes, but we are going to be building.
Agreed.
Yeah, we are going to be building on, as I mentioned, in the GTA. If we go out a little broader, there have been other organizations trying to address this issue through a culturally affirming lens. So we hope to build on that work for sure. Any other questions or comments? Okay. This is from Trevon. This may actually be the first of its kind across Canada, even North America, based on the preliminary literature scan. Yes, thank you, Trevon. So really significant undertaking. And as I said, we're really excited about the possibility of this informing other work, right? So, and it will invariably inform other work. Just as we're looking at the existing models, someone will look at this work, some institution, some organization will look at this work to inform their work. So we're really excited to be contributing to what's building around this. Any questions or comments before we move to close? Thank you, Clovis, for mentioning the various perspectives. Looking from the Newmarket Family Law Information Center's perspective, we deal with youth, and at times their parents who are looking for support and specific services mentioned here today. Great work. Thank you again. Thank you for that comment. Okay, as we look to close today, I did want to end on a sort of next steps note. So as I said, once we have ethics approval, we will immediately be working with the advisory to share a call for participants in this research. And so that will include a project flyer, ways in which participants can be engaged and connect with us. It will clarify incentives that are being offered for those who do come forward, as well as all of the informed consent processes around that. So the next thing you will likely hear from us is that call to action. And so what we're really hoping is that when you receive that package next month, that please share this project as widely as you can. If you know young people or service providers who meet that definition that we're working with, 16 to 29, working with youth 16 to 29, or service providers who have experience working with Black youth experiencing homelessness or housing precarity in the last 5 years. So it doesn't have to be, you know, that you're doing it right now. Perhaps someone was doing this work during the pandemic, for example, and is no longer. That's a really vital perspective to be brought into this work. So our ask is, when you receive the communication around calls for participation, we ask that you please activate those and share them as widely as you can. And if there are specific individuals whose voices you absolutely feel needs to be brought into this process, please get in touch through the information around how to get in touch. That will be part of what you receive, how to participate, and all the communication materials that can be shared with your network. So we really want to emphasize that this project will be greatly enhanced and benefited by that ongoing support and interest and engagement in the process. And we will, in our planning a little later on, create another opportunity like this, perhaps in person, perhaps virtual. We haven't figured that out, where we would want to share some findings when we have them with the community. So we want to make this participatory as much as we can, but we need your support in sharing about it and helping us with the recruitment for the work is going to be critical. Any final comments, or Clovis, anything you want to say in closing?
No, just to echo, sorry, just to echo what you said. So thank you all for your interest, and you most certainly would be one of those stakeholders that we're looking to hear your feedback from and your participation in. And secondly, as Neil shared, for your support in disseminating to other providers, as well as any young people that you may be aware of. And